This is CNN. Let's listen. This is the first segment I saw. So this came out. This is the broadcast from 4 in the morning my time. So this is 7 a.m. East Coast time. 7 a.m. East Coast time. This is the first segment that came out. So we're talking 8.5 hours ago.
In the first 3 weeks alone, following 7 October, Israel deployed 6,000 bombs per week. At least 200 times, it has deployed 2,000-pound bombs in southern areas of Palestine designated as safe.
Right now, you are looking at live pictures from The Hague in the Netherlands as Israel is in court there this morning to defend its actions in Gaza in a case with huge stakes. It could shape the war against Hamas. The International Court of Justice is just wrapping up its first day of hearings. In this case, it has been brought by South Africa. It accuses Israel of committing genocide in Gaza. This has sparked protests outside the court. You see there the streets of the Netherlands, both pro-Palestinian and pro-Israel demonstrators showing up. Dutch police had to separate the groups. In a petition late last month, South Africa alleged that, quote, acts and omissions by Israel are genocidal in character, and they are committed with the intent to destroy Palestinians in Gaza and as part of the broader Palestinian national, racial, and ethnic group. More than 23,000 people have been killed in Gaza since October 7th. That is according to the Hamas-controlled health ministry. Millions have been displaced, and the United Nations has warned the entire population in the war-torn Gaza Strip faces the risk of famine. Israel firmly rejects South Africa's claims. Listen.
The IDF is doing its utmost to...
So, Israel firmly... Why didn't they play anything that South African said? Why didn't they do that? But they're going to play what Netanyahu says. Known liar, proven liar, pathological liar. The person who cable news itself has been dragging. But in this context, we believe Netanyahu, right?
To minimize civilian casualties, while Hamas is doing its utmost to maximize them by using Palestinian civilians as human shields. The IDF urges Palestinian civilians to leave war zones by disseminating leaflets, making phone calls, providing safe passage corridors.
The United States, specifically the Secretary of State Antony Blinken, also denouncing South Africa's petition. Listen to this.
The charge of genocide is meritless. It's particularly galling, given that those who are attacking Israel, Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis, as well as their supporter Iran, continue to openly call for the annihilation of Israel and the mass murder of Jews.
The International Court of Justice is the main judicial body of the United Nations. A 1948 convention after the Holocaust made genocide a crime under international law. It gave the ICJ, this court, the authority to determine whether states, nations have committed it. So the question is, what happens with this case brought by South Africa? No one really knows better than Luis Moreno Ocampo, the former chief prosecutor at the ICC, which prosecutes individuals.
So what happens? No one better knows than this guy. So understand, if cable corporate-owned news owned by the Israeli lobby is bringing on anyone with any credentials, you can almost guarantee 99.9% of the time this person is a sellout to the cause. Let's give this guy a chance. Let's listen.
Individuals for war crimes and genocide, while the International Court of Justice settles disputes between nations. I appreciate you being with us on such a significant day. And I'd like your take now that the first day of argument is over. We'll hear Israel's side tomorrow. South Africa is asking Israel to completely suspend their military operations in Gaza. Do you think these allegations have merit? Where do you think this court goes?
Well, the first point is South Africa is not attacking Israel, it's transforming a war conflict into a just discussion. And I think that's crucially important because I like to take the side of the victims, Israeli victims and Palestinian victims. So the Israel move, the South African move, is helping us to move from war to justice. What will happen with that? I think the most important thing is in a couple of weeks, the court will decide to issue provisional measures. And one point very clear is the blockade of water and gasoline is illegal.
Sitting is open.
That blockade is directed against civilians. You can discuss the bombing. The bombing is more complicated legally, but the blockade is illegal. So I expect that in a couple of weeks, the Court of Justice, the International Court of Justice, will decide Israel should stop the blockade and Egypt should stop the blockade.
So again, like I said, if they're bringing him on, he's not going to be saying anything contrary to what is allowed, what CNN will allow their pro-Israel audience to listen to. This is the furthest left they will go. This is the furthest towards justice they will go. This is the furthest of acknowledging it they will go. They understand they can't just outright bring on a guy to say, no, this is not happening. This is completely ridiculous. So they have a guy to come on and go, the bombing shit, that's complicated. But the blockade, yeah, food and water. You see, this is the sort of a social democratic sort of approach or sort of framing of this. But let's see if he gets any better or worse at this.
One of the key questions that I have in all of this is about Hamas's actions, right? It is indisputable that Hamas uses Palestinian civilians.
She states a bunch of bullshit. Indisputable. Who said it's indisputable? But why are you inserting this question instead of focusing on Israel's the one being brought to court, not Hamas? So understand how our cable news and our corporate news, they're here to give cover, not provide information. They hold back information that they don't want you to know and give you lies that they do want you to know in order to convince you to go along with their whatever they want you to go along. In this case, with the genocide. I'm going to rewind 15 seconds and let her ask the question again.
To stop the blockade and Egypt to stop the blockade.
One of the key questions that I have in all of this is about Hamas's actions, right? It is indisputable that Hamas uses Palestinian civilians as human shields. They often base their operations around civilian infrastructure. Do Hamas's actions and the way that it attacked Israel on October 7th, does that factor into a potential ruling here?
No. No, it does not. Because let's say I'm a criminal by Western standards. I go in and I kill somebody. And I go into a police station and kill an officer. And which is unwarranted. I'm the criminal. I do all kind of bad stuff, and I go in and kill a quote-unquote innocent officer, and then I take cover in a place with a lot of public people. Now, the police force come after me, searching for me. To get to me, they murder another 100 people. How does what I did at the station make it okay for what the police did? How is that at all relevant? Because no matter what I did, the police should not be killing 100 civilians in order to get to one perpetrator. That's the point. Now it's kind of jumbled. My apologies for the analogy, but the level of she's trying to lead this guy in a particular way, lead this conversation in a particular way away from this being sort of a legitimate action. So it's now she's trying to insert, but look what Hamas did. But let's listen to what he says the answer to that question is. Oops, I didn't hit play. Let's play.
Well, Hamas clearly committed genocide for me. I say that because his intention to destroy Israelis in the region. And Hamas has hostages now.
So that first line, now you understand why they bought this particular guy. He said Hamas is definitely genocide is in there. That's completely a Western talking point, because saying the destruction of the state of Israel is not the same thing as a genocide against Jewish people. It's irrelevant, but this is what Zionists do in order to conflate the two. But this is an exact example of why they brought this guy on. But let's listen. Oop, I mean, to hit that.
Now, and Hamas is using civilians as a shield. Mm-hmm. However, Hamas is the state. So in the international court of justice, states appear. So
if you didn't hear what he said, I'm going to rewind it, because he's saying the question is, what about Hamas and what they're doing? Now, he says a bunch of shit that really is not even relevant to the question, but it's relevant to why he's here. I'm here to bootlick and cover for the United States, who is genocidal adjacent to Israel. So I need to say all this other shit because the answer to your question is not a good answer for you Western chauvinists. That's the entire reason he said all that other nonsense. It's not even answering these
Hamas
questions.
has hostages now, and Hamas is using civilians as a shield. Mm-hmm. However, Hamas is the state. So in the international court of justice, states appear. So that's why the rule.
So he said, however, Hamas is this, Hamas is that, but Hamas is not a state. States appear in the International Court of Justice. States. Hamas is not a state, which makes this not a war.
The ruling will not be about Hamas because it's not a state.
But Hamas
the other court.
Luis, just you're exactly right on the technical terms of it. However, Hamas is the entity within Gaza that Israel is fighting.
Yes, but the solution for Hamas is a criminal case.
Yeah.
That's why it's important. The other court in The Hague, the International Criminal Court, is conducting investigation and has open investigation in Gaza. So the International Criminal Court can indict the Hamas leaders. And that, for me, is what we have to do. Replace, to control Hamas crimes, go for justice, no war.
This is their coverage of what's happening at The Hague. To bring on a U.S. empire bootlicker to say a bunch of nonsense about the resistance, aka Hamas, and she doesn't like what he's saying, even though he's a bootlicker for you guys. Don't bring any video of the testimony. Don't bring any video of the opening statements. None of the stuff that South Africa presents. All of the video content they present is all Israeli video content, and they just tell you what South Africa said. They brought up Netanyahu. They played a video from him. They played a video from Blinken, and then they bring on this bootlicker. Corporate media, cable news is genocide adjacent. To me, they're just as bad. Israel is mounting a full court press to prevent an ICJ finding that it's committing genocide in Gaza. On January 4th, the Israeli foreign minister instructed its embassies to pressure politicians and diplomats in their host countries to make statements opposing South Africa's case at the ICJ. Now, I haven't seen any major countries come out and say anything like this is ridiculous, except for the United States. Not even France has come out and said anything like that. And if the UK have, I haven't seen it, but maybe they have. But they are calling for a ceasefire, so I don't know if they have. But look what they're doing. Israeli foreign minister. Now, if you're on the side of the good guys, why are you having to contact embassies to say, hey, say that you're against this? Why would you have to do that? But I continue with the second paragraph here. A January 4 cable from the Israeli foreign minister says that Israel's strategic goal is that the ICJ reject South Africa's request for an injunction to suspend Israel's military action in Gaza, refuse to find that Israel is committing genocide in Gaza, and rule that Israel is complying with international law. Quote, a ruling by the court could have significant potential implications that are not only in the legal world, but the practical, bilateral, multilateral, economic security ramifications, the cable states. Quote, the cable further goes on and says, we ask for an immediate and unequivocal public statement along the following lines to publicly and clearly state that your country rejects the outrageous, and it's sick in quotes, absurd and basic allegations made against Israel. Now, this is the cable that went out to the embassies in different countries, in host countries. So the cable instructs Israeli embassies to urge diplomats and politicians at the highest levels to, quote, quickly acknowledge that Israel is working together with international actors to increase the humanitarian aid in Gaza, as well as to minimize damage to civilian while acting in defense after the horrible October 7th attack by a genocidal terrorist organization. Israel and its chief patron, the United States, understands the magnitude of South Africa's ICJ application, and they are livid. Israel usually thumbs its nose at international institutions, but it is taking South Africa's case seriously. In 2021, when the International Criminal Court launched an investigation into Israel's alleged war crimes in Gaza, Israel firmly rejected the legitimacy of the probe. They can't hear because they're a member of the ICJ. Quote, Israel generally doesn't participate in such proceedings, professor at international law expert at Tel Aviv University told Harris. But the same professor goes on to say, quote, but this isn't a UN inquiry commission or the International Criminal Court in The Hague, whose authority Israel rejects. It's the International Court of Justice, which derives its power from a treaty Israel joined, so it can't reject it on the usual grounds of lacking authority. It's also a body with international prestige. So it was very smart for South Africa to bring the case to the ICJ instead of the ICC.
The first genocidal act committed by Israel is the mass killing of Palestinians in Gaza, in violation of Article 2A of the Genocide Convention. As the UN Secretary General explained 5 weeks ago, the level of Israel's killing is so extensive that nowhere is safe in Gaza. As I stand before you today, 23,210 Palestinians have been killed by Israeli forces during the sustained attacks over the last 3 months. At least 70% of whom are believed to be women and children. Some 7,000 Palestinians are still missing. presumed dead under the rubble. Palestinians in Gaza are subjected to relentless bombing wherever they go. They are killed in their homes, in places where they seek shelter, in hospitals, in schools, in mosques, in churches, and as they try to find food and water for their families. They have been killed if they failed to evacuate. In the places to which they have fled, and even while they attempted to flee along Israeli-declared safe routes. The level of killing is so extensive that those whose bodies are found are buried in mass graves, often unidentified. In the first 3 weeks alone, following 7 October, Israel deployed 6,000 bombs per week.
Wow.
At least 200 times, it has deployed 2,000-pound bombs in southern areas of Palestine designated as safe. These bombs have also decimated the north, including refugee camps. 2,000-pound bombs are some of the biggest and most destructive bombs available. They are dropped by lethal fighter jets that are used to strike targets on the ground by one of the world's most resourced armies. Israel has killed an unparalleled and unprecedented number of civilians, with the full knowledge of how many civilian lives each bomb will take. More than 1,800 families, Palestinian families in Gaza, have lost multiple family members, and hundreds of multi-generational families have been wiped out with no remaining survivors. Mothers, fathers, children, siblings, grandparents, aunts, cousins, often all killed together. This killing is nothing short of destruction of Palestinian life. It is inflicted deliberately. No one is spared, not even newborn babies. The scale of Palestinian child killings in Gaza is such that UN chiefs have described it as a graveyard for children. The devastation, we submit, is intended to and has laid waste to Gaza beyond any acceptable, legal, let alone humane justification.
Yeah, so she lays it out pretty damn well there, and we have lots of, not lots, but maybe another 4 or 5 clips that are similar of the different presenters is what I'm going to call them in this context, because I don't know, like what their technical name is, so I'll just call them presenters, but there's like a handful of them. Let's get to this next one here. And hang on a second. It does this every time. It hops. All right, so let's get to this one here and listen to this other presenter from South Africa.
Extraordinary feature in this case that Israel's political...
It says Tumbinka. Tumbinka is his first name, South African legal team. So this is part of the legal team. So I'll say it that way.
There is an extraordinary feature in this case that Israel's political leaders, military commanders, and persons holding official positions have systematically and in explicit terms declared their genocidal intent. And these statements are then repeated by soldiers on the ground in Gaza as they engage in the destruction of Palestinians and the physical infrastructure of Gaza. Many propagators of grave atrocities have protested that they were misunderstood, that they did not mean what they said, and that their own words were taken out of context. What state would admit to a genocidal intent? Yet, the distinctive feature of this case has not been the silence as such, but the reiteration and repetition of genocidal speech throughout every sphere of state in Israel. We remind the court of the identity and authority of the genocidal inciters. The Prime Minister, the President, the Minister of Defense, the Minister of National Security, the Minister of Energy and Infrastructure,
calling them all out,
members of the Knesset, senior army officials, and
so this gentleman is in charge of pointing out intent, and he's speaking about how there's silence surrounding the idea of intent is not what we're going to have a problem with this case, because there's multiple members in all facets, I forget the word they use, but all different levels of the government that have is on video. He didn't say this part, on some sort of recordable device, whether it's video or audio or some other device, saying genocidal things. And he's, you know, just kind of listing those people out. So I'll rewind it maybe 10 seconds and let him finish off the video here.
Of the identity and authority of the genocidal inciters. The Prime Minister, the President, the Minister of Defense, the Minister of National Security, the Minister of Energy and Infrastructure, members of the Knesset, senior army officials, and foot soldiers. Genocidal utterances are therefore not out in the fringes. They are embodied in state policy. The intent to destroy is plainly understood by soldiers.
Like, is it the Likud party? The Likud party coming to power, you know, having this very extreme ideology, Nazi ideology. Nazis are proud to talk about it. Nazis, they don't shy away because you believe what they're saying. They have a different belief system. So when we hear Nazi, we cringe. When they hear Nazi, they cheer. So the Likud party being so radical, and like Nick said yesterday in the stream, I think it was yesterday or 2 days ago, maybe, Netanyahu is like a moderate in the Likud party. So the ones that have been on video saying just outlandish shit that we've all covered in many segments here, prove that it's not a fringe idea that, like this gentleman is saying here, this is embedded in the system of government.
Are therefore not out in the fringes. They are embodied in state policy. The intent to destroy is plainly understood by soldiers on the ground. It is also fully understood by some within the Israeli society, with the government facing criticism for allowing in any aid to Gaza on the basis that it is recanting on its promise to starve Palestinians. Any suggestion that Israeli officials did not mean what they said or were not fully understood by soldiers and civilians alike to mean what they said should be rejected by this court. The evidence of genocidal intent is not only chilling, it is also overwhelming and incontrovertible.
And I'm going to read the caption here. It says, South African legal team says Israel has genocidal intent against Palestinians in Gaza. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. No big deal. We'll refresh it here. Okay. All right. This is the Irish lawyer that's working with the team. So let's continue. And that's who this is here. Reading the caption.
Huge swathes of Gaza, entire towns, villages, refugee camps are being wiped from the map. As you have heard, but it bears repeating, According to the World Food Programme, 4 out of 5 people in the world in famine or a catastrophic type of hunger are in Gaza right now. Indeed, experts warn that deaths from starvation and disease risk significantly outstripping deaths from bombings. The daily statistics stand as clear evidence of the urgency.
Did you hear that part? The deaths that come from all of the weapons that we send, U.S. weapons, the bombs and bullets. Well, the death due to starvation, that's going to surpass that. And the U.S. and Joe Biden supports it. But Trump, though, right?
And of the irreparable prejudice. On the basis of the current figures, on average, 247 Palestinians are being killed and are at risk of being killed each day.
247 being killed or at risk of being killed every day. That's the average.
Many of them literally blown to pieces. They include 48 mothers each day.
48 mothers.
Every hour. And over 117 children each day.
117 children each day. And then you're going to say, how are you voting that this is not a genocide? How many Hamas are? Unless you're not even going to say that. I'm trying to see how to word this. From their point of view, so are you saying one Hamas dead is per day it's worth 100 and some odd kids killed per day? Like this is irrefutable at this point. The sheer numbers completely debunk the idea that this is not the intent.
Leading UNICEF to call Israel's actions a war on children. Entire multi-generational families will be obliterated. And yet more Palestinian children will become WCNSF. Wounded child, no surviving family. The terrible new act.
Wounded child, no surviving family.
Born out of Israel's genocidal assault on the Palestinian population in Gaza.
Palestinians are appreciating the efforts by South Africa at the International Court of Justice. And this is a brief video that's put together by Al Jazeera TV.
Thank you. Thank you to South Africa. Thank you for filing case against occupation at the ICJ. We believe that many countries felt our pain, but South Africa decided to put it materially on paper, and file a case. اليوم 95